Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another fascinating deep dive?
Always.
Okay, so today we're going to follow a career trajectory that's, well, let's just say it's not your typical path. We're looking at Kevin McAleenan.
From Homeland Security to BigBear.ai.
Exactly. How does someone go from, the top of a massive government agency to leading a cutting-edge AI company?
It's a pretty big leap.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to try to unpack today. We're going to dig into the source material and see if we can uncover what this unusual move might tell us about, where national security is headed in this whole AI-driven world. What do you think? Ready to jump in?
Absolutely, let's do it. There's a lot to uncover here, and I think our listeners are going to find some real aha moments.
Okay, so the source material takes us way back to McAleenan's early days, before all the high-profile stuff. He actually started out in law, but then he shifted his focus to border security.
Specifically within Customs and Border Protection, CBP.
Right, CBP. And what's interesting is even before AI was like the big buzzword it is today, he was already pushing for a data-driven approach at CBP. I mean, think about it. That was kind of ahead of its time, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Back then, CBP, like a lot of government agencies, they relied a lot on manual processes and intuition. But McAleenan, he saw that data could be a game changer. He really championed using
To
analytics.
like predict things.
Yeah, like smuggling patterns
Oh,
or
yeah.
assessing risk, even figuring out how to use resources in a smarter way. And this whole data-driven approach, it actually led to some pretty significant improvements.
Like what? Give us an example.
Well, for one, things started moving faster at border crossings. Processing times went down. They were also able to catch more illegal stuff coming through. So in a lot of ways, you could say he was laying the groundwork for all those AI-powered systems we see everywhere today.
So it's like he was thinking about AI before AI was even really a thing.
Kinda, yeah. He was definitely ahead of the curve.
That's fascinating. And it really sets the stage for his success later on, right? Because he goes on to become CBP commissioner. And from what I read in the source material, he really made some big changes there.
Oh, yeah, he overhauled border security tech in a big way. I mean, he brought in facial recognition, predictive analytics, all kinds of cutting-edge stuff. But what's really impressive is that he didn't just put in the tech, he actually made sure it worked with everything else they were already doing.
So it's like he knew how to make technology actually work for them, not just be a shiny new toy.
Exactly. He understood the tech, but he also understood, the day-to-day reality of how CBP operated.
That makes sense. Now, we can't talk about McAleenan without talking about the 2019 migrant crisis.
Yeah.
He had to manage that whole thing, right? And that was a pretty intense situation, to say the least.
No kidding. It was a huge humanitarian challenge, but he also had to maintain border security at the same time. Talk about a high-pressure job.
So how did he handle that?
Well, he focused on a couple of things. First, he tried to get all the different agencies working together better, because you know how it is. Sometimes those government agencies, they could be a little siloed.
Yeah, they don't always talk to each other.
Right. So he pushed for better coordination. He also streamlined a lot of the processes, tried to make things more efficient. And he used data to try to anticipate where the migration flows would be so they could be more prepared.
So again, he was using data to be proactive, to get ahead of the problem.
Exactly. But he also recognized that technology wasn't a magic bullet. He knew that human judgment and compassion, those things were still really important, especially when you're dealing with a situation that's so sensitive.
That's interesting because sometimes when people talk about AI and big data, they forget about the human side of things.
Right, but it sounds like McAleenan was always aware of that.
And it's all of that experience managing those complex situations, making changes at CBP that really prepares him for the next step in his career. The Trump administration. Yeah. And that's a whole other can of worms, right?
Yeah.
Things get a lot more political.
Definitely. It was a pretty charged environment.
So let's focus on his leadership style during that time. As acting Secretary of Homeland Security, I mean, that's a big job. And the source material describes him as decisive yet diplomatic. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it means he was willing to make tough calls, even when those calls were controversial. But he also tried to keep things civil, build relationships, keep those lines of communication open.
So even in a really politically divided environment, he's trying to find ways to work together.
It seems that way. He understood that even when things get heated, you still need some level of collaboration to get stuff done.
Okay, so here's where we see a really big shift in McAleenan's career. And it tells us a lot about how much AI is changing the game in the security world. While he's in the Trump administration, He's a big advocate for something called digital transformation within Homeland Security. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Basically, it means using technology to modernize the whole operation, make things more efficient, more effective. A good example is how he pushed to use biometrics more, like facial recognition at airports and border
To
crossings.
like speed things up.
Right, and to make things more secure. But it wasn't just about using new tech, it was about changing the whole way the agency operated, making it more data-driven.
So it's that same data-driven mindset he had back at CBP, but now he's trying to apply it on a much larger scale.
Exactly.
Okay, and now we come to the move that really raised eyebrows. BigBear.ai. Most people probably wouldn't see the connection between Homeland Security and an AI company. So tell us, what exactly does BigBear.ai do, and why would someone like McAleena be interested in them?
So BigBear.ai, they're all about creating AI applications, but specifically for defense and intelligence work. They take huge amounts of data and analyze it to help security professionals make better decisions, faster decisions.
Like what kind of decisions?
Oh, all kinds. Identifying threats, allocating resources, making sure the right people and equipment are in the right place at the right time, even predicting things like cyber attacks. And this is where McAleenan's experience comes in. He knows security, he knows policy, and he's been a champion for data-driven approaches from the very beginning.
It's like all the pieces of his career are suddenly coming together.
Exactly.
And the source material actually points out 3 specific ways he could really make an impact at BigBear.ai. First, he could help them land those big government contracts. I mean, he's got the connections, he knows how the system works. That's got to be valuable, right?
Oh, incredibly valuable. He knows the players, he speaks the language, he understands the whole procurement process. It would be a huge advantage for BigBear.ai to have someone like that on their team.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The second impact mentioned is operational excellence. Now, what does that even mean for a company like BigBear.ai?
Well, think about it. McAleenan has a history of taking complicated systems and making them work better. He could bring that same approach to BigBear.ai.
So like making their internal operations more efficient.
Exactly, streamlining their processes, making sure they're developing AI solutions that actually meet the needs of their clients.
Especially those government clients.
Right, because he knows what they're looking for.
And then finally, and this is where things get really interesting, he could really push for the integration of AI into national security on a much bigger scale than ever before.
Right, because he's got a foot in both worlds. He understands the potential of AI, but he also understands the realities of government and the challenges they face. He could help bridge that gap.
So he's not just a tech guy. He's not just a policy guy. He's kind of this hybrid figure who can connect those two worlds.
It's a great way to put it.
It's amazing to see how his whole career has kind of unfolded alongside the rise of AI in the security world.
Yeah, it's almost like he's been preparing for this role his whole life without even knowing it.
We've gone from understanding his leadership style to seeing how his whole career trajectory really reflects this massive shift that's happening in national security. I mean, AI is only going to become more and more important, right?
Absolutely. It's already changing the game, and that's only going to accelerate in the years to come.
Which leads to a pretty big question that I think we need to consider. As AI plays a bigger and bigger role in security and defense, what are the ethical implications? I mean, this is powerful technology. We need to make sure we're using it responsibly.
That's a really important point. And it's a conversation we need to be having now, not later, because the decisions we make today about how we develop and use AI are going to have huge consequences down the road.
No doubt about it. Well, Deep Divers, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've traced the career of a man who's been at the forefront of change, someone who's seen firsthand how technology is reshaping the world of security. But as we've seen, this story is about much more than just one person. It's a story about the future, about the choices we make, and the responsibility we have to use these powerful tools wisely. Food for thought as we head into this brave new world. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time.